Before the flood, before rebellion ever touched the heavens, there was peace. 7 divine sentinels stood watch over the world below: Uriel, Raphael, Raguel, Michael, Saraqael, Gabriel, and Ramiel. They were not as men nor as gods, but as living flames of purpose, radiant before the throne of the Almighty. Each was given a charge: to guard, to heal, to avenge, to guide. And they walked among mankind unseen, ensuring that the will of heaven was done upon the earth. Their presence stirred awe, their silence reverence. The earth knew harmony, for the watchers still walked in light. Then something shifted. Even the heavens can feel unease, a trembling between the stars. A whisper passed among the watchers, faint, uncertain, yet it carried the weight of eternity. "Do you feel it?" one asked. "Something moves in the hearts of our brethren." For far beyond the veil of peace, another fire began to burn. Desire, pride, curiosity unguarded. The faithful sensed it like thunder before the storm. Michael stood upon the heights of creation, his gaze piercing the clouds. "Not all who watch will remain pure," he said. So they gathered, these 7 faithful, around the crystal sea where time itself bowed before God. There, a voice like rushing water spoke from the throne: "Hold fast to your charge, for soon temptation will rise like smoke from the mountains. The sons of heaven will be tried, and only the steadfast shall stand." And the 7 bowed low, their wings trembling with reverent fear. They knew the test was coming, though they did not yet see how near it was. The peace of heaven began to dim, not by darkness, but by longing, and so began the stillness before the fall, that sacred pause between obedience and rebellion. The world remained silent, unaware that destiny itself was turning. The watchers watched, but what they saw would soon shake heaven and earth alike. The storm had not yet come, but the heavens were already holding their breath. If this story stirs something within you, follow our channel God Revealed, where ancient truth meets divine mystery. And write in the comments, "I will stand firm." Night had fallen over the world. The stars, once pure and silent, began to tremble. Among the watchers, curiosity turned to fire, and that fire began to whisper. Zemjaza, their leader, stood apart, brilliant, powerful, admired. Yet within him something ancient and dangerous stirred. He gazed upon the daughters of men, and desire entered his heart. What began as admiration became obsession. He spoke to Azazel, to Raguel, to Raguel, and to many others. "Why," he asked, "should we remain distant from those we were sent to guide? Are they not beautiful? Are we not worthy to dwell among them?" Azazel's eyes glimmered with pride. "We could share with them the knowledge of heaven," he said softly. "We could teach them the arts of metal, the power of enchantments, the shaping of the world. We could rule, not as servants of the Most High, but as gods among men." His voice carried like wind through the mountains. And then, upon Mount Hermon, a place of towering majesty, 200 gathered in secret. A shadow moved across the sky. The oath was sworn. Hands of light touched hands of flame, and heaven itself recoiled. "We bind ourselves to one another," Zemjaza declared, "that none may turn back. Together we shall descend and take for ourselves the daughters of men." Then, silence, a stillness so heavy it pressed upon creation itself. The 7 faithful felt it. From their stations, they watched as the covenant of rebellion was sealed beneath the stars. Gabriel's voice trembled. "Brothers, they have sworn an unholy vow." Raphael answered, "Then the earth shall drink sorrow." Michael, the warrior of light, turned his face toward the mountain. "If they descend," he said, "they will bring ruin to all flesh." Yet heaven did not intervene, not yet. The Almighty allows every choice to ripen before judgment falls. As dawn broke, a crimson light touched the peaks of Hermon. It was no ordinary dawn. It was the birth of defiance. The fallen prepared to leave their thrones of light, to trade glory for shadow. They longed for beauty, for power, for dominion. But the faithful watchers could only weep. In the stillness of that hour, even the winds seemed to mourn. Then a voice, not human, not angelic, echoed through the vastness of heaven. "The covenant is made, and the earth will groan beneath its weight. The mountain stood silent, but its shadow reached all the way to the gates of heaven. Something had begun that could not be undone. The faithful would soon see what rebellion truly costs. Then came the night that changed creation. The 200 descended from the heights of Mount Hermon like burning stars. Their radiance split the skies, and the mountains trembled beneath their steps. The sons of heaven, once pure and bright, now cloaked themselves in shadow. The wind carried their voices, not in praise, but in hunger. The daughters of men looked upon them, and were struck with wonder, for they appeared like gods in the twilight. And so the great corruption began. They took wives from among humankind. Their unions birthed beings of impossible stature, the Nephilim, mighty and terrible. The world groaned beneath their strength. These giants devoured the fruit of the earth, the flocks, and finally men themselves. Blood stained the soil. Cities rose in violence, and peace vanished from the hearts of men. Then Azazel, the cunning one, unveiled his gift. He taught men how to forge the metals of the earth, to shape the sword, the spear, and the armor of death. To women, he taught the art of adornment, of painting the face, of weaving metals and stones for vanity. With these, he said, you will command power, and mankind obeyed. Enoch would later write that the angels taught enchantments, the cutting of roots, the reading of signs, and the movement of the stars. Knowledge that had been sealed for heaven's use alone was now scattered across the earth like shards of glass. Each truth was twisted, each gift corrupted. Men sought power instead of wisdom. The Nephilim ruled, towering over valleys, devouring nations, building monuments to their fathers, the fallen ones. The earth was filled with noise, cruelty, and blasphemy. The faithful 7 watched from the heights, grieved beyond measure. "Do you see what they have done?" said Gabriel, his voice breaking the stillness. "They have turned the secrets of light into weapons of darkness," Raphael answered. "The sons of man cry out from the ground. Their blood rises like incense, pleading for deliverance." Michael unsheathed his sword of fire. "The Most High is patient," he said, "but the patience of heaven is not without end." Even Ramiel, the cherub of resurrection, wept. What was meant for guidance has become a curse. The world forgets its creator, and as the earth darkened, a voice from heaven spoke through the void. "The heart of man has grown corrupt. The breath of the Almighty grieves within him." Thunder rolled through the heavens, a sound not of storm, but of sorrow. For every secret revealed without grace carries a price, and the price of this knowledge was ruin. The faithful watchers could do nothing but observe. Their duty was to witness, not to interfere. They watched the children of the fallen build cities that scraped the sky, armies that bled the earth, and temples where once they prayed to God. Now they bowed to the names of their angelic fathers. It was a world unrecognizable, a garden turned to wilderness. Then one evening, as the sun sank red into the horizon, a whisper passed among the faithful 7. It was the beginning of something greater than wrath, the stirring of divine judgment. The cries of the earth had reached the throne of heaven. The Most High would no longer remain silent. A command was about to be spoken, and when it was, all creation would tremble. Then heaven answered. The earth groaned under blood and arrogance. The Nephilim devoured without mercy. Men bent their knees not to the Creator, but to the fallen. Sorcery, vanity, violence, these covered the ground like smoke. And in that darkness a cry rose up. The ancient record says, "The whole earth brought accusation against the lawless ones." The suffering of mankind reached the throne. The patience of the Most High had run its course, and then a voice moved through heaven. It was not a sound. It was a command that shook existence itself. "It is enough," said the Eternal. "The rebellion of the watchers will not stand. Their seed will not remain. Their corruption will not endure." And when that decree was spoken, the faithful 7 received their charge. One by one each was called by name. "Uriel," said the voice, "go to the son of Lamech." And Uriel, radiant and solemn, descended toward the earth. He came to a man called Noah, a righteous man in a world that had forgotten righteousness. Uriel revealed what no human eye had yet seen. "The end has been declared," he told him. "The flood of waters is appointed. Prepare what must be prepared. Preserve what the Almighty has chosen to spare." So Before judgment touched the earth, mercy was offered to one household. That is how heaven works. Judgment never comes without warning. Raphael, said the voice, bind Azazel. Azazel had led mankind into pride and murder. He armed the violent. He adorned the corrupt. He taught the defilement of flesh and spirit. Now his end was spoken. Raphael, guardian and healer of men, did not come gently. He came with chains of judgment in his hands. Your time is finished, he declared. You will no longer walk among the living. Raphael cast Azazel into a desolate place, into dryness and ruin, and covered him in darkness until the final day. And a voice said, seal him there, that he may see no light. Then came Raguel. Raguel, said the voice, judge the corrupted ones. Raguel is the angel of justice, the avenger over those who led the world astray. His task was not comfort. His task was setting the record straight. He was sent to those watchers who had twisted creation and made themselves lords over men. Raguel struck down the deceivers. Every false throne raised by the fallen was torn down. Every voice that glorified rebellion was silenced. The heavens do not forget injustice. They answer it. Then the command turned like a sword. Michael, the great prince, the warrior of the Most High, the terror of darkness. To him it was said, go, gather the host, subdue the rebels, break their strength. Do not let them escape. Michael's presence is not gentle. Michael's presence is battle. He descended with the armies of heaven, not to persuade, but to confront. To Semjaza, leader of the oath on Mount Hermon, Michael's arrival was the end of defiance. The proud ones who once swore, we will not turn back, now trembled, and then the decree to Saraqael. Saraqael, keeper over the spirits who have sinned, bind them. To Saraqael was given a work of final restraint. He was sent to seal the spirits of the fallen, to confine the watchers who had abandoned their holy place. Not to destroy them, not yet, but to hold them in chains until the day appointed. As it is written, the angels who did not keep their proper domain are held in everlasting chains, awaiting judgment. Their freedom was over, their influence cut off, their arrogance buried. Gabriel, said the voice next, cleanse the earth. Gabriel, who stands in the presence of God, who carries the word that cannot fail, received a fearsome task. He was sent against the giants, against the Nephilim, who devoured, enslaved, and blasphemed. You will no longer rule over flesh, Gabriel declared. Your strength ends now. The mighty ones fell. Their bodies, unstoppable in war, were brought down by judgment that no sword of man could deliver. The earth shook as they fell. Kingdoms built on stolen power collapsed in a single breath. And last, Ramiel. Ramiel, said the voice, stand over those who will rise. Ramiel watched not only the fall of the wicked, but the hope of the righteous. His charge was restoration, resurrection, destiny beyond ruin. While wrath moved across the earth, Ramiel guarded the promise that all would not be lost, that there would still be a future, that the line of the faithful would not be erased. Then the decree of the Almighty went forth like fire. Bind them in the depths of the earth, he said, until the day of judgment. For they will see what they have caused, and they will know that I alone am the Lord. Heaven had spoken, judgment had begun. But the sentence was not yet carried out in full, and when Michael moved, the rebellion itself would meet its breaking point. Then the heavens opened, and silence fled. Lightning tore through the veil between worlds. Michael, the Prince of Heaven, descended like a storm of living fire, his sword blazing brighter than the sun. Behind him moved legions beyond number, the host of the Almighty, radiant, terrible, unstoppable. Their cry shook the mountains and rolled across the waters. The Lord is righteous in judgment. The earth, darkened by sin, trembled beneath their march. Every secret oath spoken on Mount Hermon now echoed back as condemnation. The time of reckoning had come. Semjaza and his followers beheld the sight and knew fear for the first time. They had believed themselves immortal, untouchable, masters over men. Yet before Michael's radiance, their glory crumbled like dust in the wind. The very light they once bore now turned against them. We were once sons of the morning, Semjaza cried. But the heavens answered, you are no longer of the dawn. And war began, not with mortal weapons, but with power that split creation itself, Azazel. bound and silenced in his prison of shadow, could only feel the thunder above. His dominion over men was ending. Raguel moved swiftly through the ruins of their strongholds, striking down every false throne, every monument raised to rebellion. Gabriel descended upon their cities, where giants still walked, spreading ruin with every step. "Your fathers are bound," he declared to the Nephilim, "and your time is ended." Then the air grew heavy, the clouds thickened, and the sound of rushing waters filled the world. Noah looked to the heavens as the first drops fell. Uriel had warned him. The ark stood ready. As lightning split the sky, the faithful watchers beheld the judgment of the Almighty unfold. Mountains broke, seas rose, and the cries of the earth filled the heavens. The Nephilim fought the flood, their might useless before divine power. The waters climbed over them, silencing their roar. The sons of men, once led astray, now faced the harvest of corruption. The flood swept across valleys and kingdoms alike, and the earth began again to breathe in purity. Then Raphael descended once more, ensuring the prisons of the fallen were sealed. Deep beneath the sands, Azazel lay chained in darkness. Semjaza and his captains were bound in caverns of flame. Saraqael stood guard over their spirits, ensuring none would escape their fate. "You shall see light no more," he declared, and the gates of the abyss closed with a sound like thunder under the sea. The rebellion that began in secret ended in silence, but even as judgment burned, there was no triumph among the faithful. Gabriel turned his gaze upon the waters and whispered, "So many lost." Ramiel stood beside him. "Judgment must come," he said, "but mercy will rise again." Michael sheathed his sword and bowed before the throne that shone beyond the clouds. "It is finished," he said, "as the Almighty has spoken." Yet within that silence, the seven felt sorrow deeper than victory. The Watchers had once been brothers. They had sung together in the dawn of creation. Now half of them were gone, swallowed by darkness forever. When the floodwaters receded, the world was new, cleansed, fragile, waiting. Noah stepped out from the ark, beneath a sky washed clean by tears of heaven. Above him, the faithful Watchers resumed their silent vigil. They had obeyed, they had fought, and they had mourned. But their duty was not yet done, for though the earth was cleansed, sin still lingered in the heart of man, like embers beneath ashes. The Watchers knew the story of rebellion was not over. It had merely changed its form, and so they watched again, unseen, unwavering, waiting for the next movement in the divine design. The flood had passed, the fallen were bound, yet heaven's silence carried a question: who would now guard the hearts of men? The seven faithful remained, but their watch was far from over. The waters had stilled, the thunder had ceased, the roar of judgment faded into silence. The earth lay washed and trembling beneath the open sky, a world reborn, yet haunted by memory. Smoke rose from distant mountains where the flood had passed. The cries of the Nephilim were gone. The proud voices of the fallen had vanished. All that remained was wind, water, and a promise. The Most High had spoken once more through his covenant, that the flood would not again consume the earth. A bow of colors stretched across the heavens, a sign between creator and creation. But unseen by human eyes, seven figures still stood upon the threshold of eternity. Their faces turned toward the new dawn. They were the faithful: Uriel, Raphael, Raguel, Michael, Saraqael, Gabriel, and Ramiel. The ones who had not fallen, the ones who had chosen obedience over desire. Each bore the mark of the battle that had shaken heaven. Yet there was no pride in their victory, only solemn reverence. For they remembered their brothers, the 200 who once shared their light, now bound in darkness. Even victory can carry sorrow when it costs the loss of kin. Still, their vigil continued. The decree of the Almighty was not a single act, but an eternal command. Watch until all is fulfilled. Uriel watched over the deep places of the world, the caverns where the rebellious were imprisoned. He guarded the gates of Tartarus, where the chains of the Watchers lay coiled in unending silence. His light reached into the darkness like a warning flame, keeping the abyss from opening again. "Until the day of judgment," he whispered, "you shall not rise." Raphael walked among the living. He healed the wounds left by the flood, guiding the renewal of life. To him, the Almighty entrusted the spirits of men, fragile, easily broken, yet precious beyond measure. "Where there is pain," said Raphael, "there will be healing. Where there is death, I will remind them of mercy." His hands touched what the waters had cleansed, and the world began to bloom once more. Raguel carried the sword of justice. His charge was to maintain the balance that rebellion had shattered. Wherever deceit took root, he was the unseen hand that overturned it. "Let truth endure," he declared. "Let the crooked be made straight." Though men did not know his name, the weight of his presence was felt in every righteous act. In every moment where wrong was made right, Michael stood as the shield of the righteous, the protector of those who would seek the will of heaven. His vigilance did not end with the flood. It began anew. He walked the boundaries between the realms, sword still bright, gaze unyielding. When empires would one day rise in pride again, Michael would be there, silent, watchful, waiting for the word to act once more. Saraqael remained the warden of the fallen spirits. Beneath the earth he guarded the gates of their prison. Their whispers still reached upward, faint but restless. They longed for release, but his voice silenced them. "Your chains remain until the appointed hour." The echoes of rebellion would not be allowed to rise again. Gabriel, keeper of paradise, turned his eyes toward the heavens. His duty was to announce, to reveal, to speak when the time of revelation came. He was the herald of divine mysteries, the one who would one day carry words of life to a virgin in Nazareth and words of resurrection to the tomb. But for now he watched, silent as dawn, and Ramiel was set over resurrection, over those who would rise again. His wings shone with promise, not judgment. He stood upon the mountains, watching generations unfold, waiting for the time when all things would be restored. To him belonged the sacred hope that no fall, however great, could erase God's mercy. As the ages began to move again, the seven remained faithful. Empires rose and fell. The memory of the Watchers faded into legend, then into myth. Men remembered the flood, but not the war behind it. Yet even as humanity forgot, the Watchers did not. They still kept their posts, unseen, unsleeping, steadfast, guardians of the divine order until the end of days. And so, when the storms come, when nations tremble, when the shadows of pride return to walk the earth, their gaze remains, watching, waiting, ready. For the story of the Watchers is not only about angels who fell, but about those who never did. The faithful seven still stand, unseen, unyielding, unforgotten. If this story moved your spirit, follow our channel God Revealed and declare in the comments, "I will remain faithful."